What happens when the invisible girl becomes impossible to ignore? For Alara Winters, life in the Shadow Moon Pack meant keeping her head down, her wolf silent, and her existence as small as possible. An Omega, with no family name worth mentioning, no strength worth noting, and no future worth dreaming about. She scrubbed floors while others planned wars, served meals while others forged alliances, and watched from the shadows while her alpha selected his mate. But when Theron Blackridge stood before the entire pack at the Harvest Moon ceremony and rejected their sacred bond in front of 300 witnesses, severing the thread the moon goddess herself had woven between their souls, everything changed. The binding that had kept Alara's true nature locked away for 22 years shattered like glass. And what happens next? No one was prepared for. The morning of the ceremony, Alara woke to the scent of pine and storm rolling through her small window, a scent that made her wolf stir restlessly beneath her skin for the first time in weeks. She pressed her hand against her chest, feeling the strange pull that had been growing stronger each day, pointing her towards something, towards someone. She knew what it meant. Every werewolf knew. The mate bond was calling. But Omegas didn't get fairy tale endings, especially not Omegas like her. The servant quarters of the Shadow Moon Pack House were tucked into the eastern wing, far from the grand halls and ceremonial spaces. Alara shared a room with 3 other Omega females, their belongings crammed into a space barely large enough for 2. She dressed quickly in her plainest gray dress. I braided her dark honey hair away from her face and tried to ignore the way her wolf kept whispering one word over and over. Soon. The Harvest Moon. Ceremony happened twice a year, a massive gathering where pack alliances were strengthened, new wolves were initiated, and alphas demonstrated their power. This year's ceremony was different. Alpha Theron Blackridge was expected to announce his chosen mate, solidifying his claim to leadership of not just Shadow Moon, but the entire Northern Territory. Alara's role was simple. Stay in the kitchen, prepare the ceremonial wine, and remain invisible. She moved through the pack house with practiced silence, her footsteps barely whispering against the stone floors. The scent of lavender and morning dew clung to her skin. Her natural scent, soft and unremarkable, on other wolves passed her without acknowledgement, their conversations flowing over and around her as if she were furniture. I heard he's choosing Mira Thornwood, one beta female whispered to her companion. She's perfect for him. Beautiful, strong bloodline, and her father controls 3 territories. About time someone put that Omega in her place, another voice sneered. Did you see her yesterday? She actually looked at the Alpha, like she had any right. Ilara's cheeks burned, but she kept walking. She hadn't been looking at Theron. She'd been trying not to look at him, which was becoming increasingly impossible as the mate bond pulled tighter between them like a rope around her ribs. The ceremonial hall was chaos. Pack members from across the territory had arrived, filling the massive space with bodies and noise and competing scents. Alara worked alongside the other Omega servants, arranging wine goblets on silver trays, setting out ceremonial candles, and staying out of sight. Ilara? The voice cut through the noise like a blade. She turned to find Beta Marcus, Theron's second in command, looming over her. The scent of forest and leather rolled off him in waves of authority. The Alpha wants to see you. Now. Her wolf went absolutely still. The walk to Theron's private chamber felt like a death march. Every pack member they passed stopped to stare, their expressions ranging from confusion to outright hostility. An Omega being summoned by the Alpha never meant anything good. Marcus left her at the door. Inside, Theron Blackridge stood with his back to her, staring out the window at the gathering crowd below. He was massive, 6.5 feet of pure muscle and dominance, with dark hair that fell just past his collar and shoulders, broad enough to block out the light. The scent of forest and embers and ozone and steel filled the room so completely that Alara could barely breathe. You felt it too. His voice was rough, almost angry. He didn't turn around. Alpha, don't lie to me. Now he turned, and those ice-blue eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that made her wolf whimper. The bond. You felt it. There was no point denying it. Yes? A wave of power washed over her, making her knees weak. Theron's wolf was close to the surface, his dominance pressing against every corner of the room. "This is a mistake," he said flatly. "The moon goddess paired me with an Omega, a servant, on someone with no name, no power, no value to this pack." Each word landed like a physical blow. "I'm announcing my chosen mate tonight," he continued. "Mira Thornwood. Her bloodline is strong, her connections valuable, and her wolf is worthy of standing beside an alpha." He took a step closer, and despite everything, Alara's body responded to his proximity, the bond singing between them. "You will attend the ceremony. You will watch. And you will understand your place." "Why?" The word escaped before she could stop it. "If you've made your decision, why tell me this? Why not just—" "Because I want you to know exactly why you were never a choice." His lip curled. "Look at you. Weak. Insignificant. You can barely hold your wolf form for more than an hour. What kind of Luna would you make? What kind of legacy?" Tears burned behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Her wolf was howling inside, shredding itself against the cage of her ribs, begging for something Alara couldn't name. "You're dismissed," Theron said, turning back to the window. "And Alara, if you're smart, you'll reject the bond tonight, publicly. It'll be easier for both of us." She left without another word. The ceremony began at moonrise. 300 wolves filled the great hall, their combined energy crackling in the air like lightning before a storm. Alara stood in the back corner with the other servants, her gray dress a stark contrast to the jewel-toned gowns and ceremonial furs of the pack members. Theron stood on the raised dais at the front, magnificent in black leather and silver ceremonial armor. Beside him, Mira Thornwood preened in crimson silk, her auburn hair cascading down her back like flames. She was everything Alara wasn't: tall, powerful, beautiful. The scent of cinnamon and iron and blood rolled off her in waves. "Tonight," Theron's voice boomed across the hall, "we strengthen our pack, we honor our alliances, and we secure our future." The crowd roared approval. "The moon goddess shows us many paths," he continued, "but a true alpha chooses the path that serves his pack above all else." His eyes found Alara across the room, cold and deliberate. "Mira Thornwood, daughter of the Eastern Territory, I claim you as my chosen mate." Time stopped. The bond between Alara and Theron, that golden thread she'd felt growing stronger every day, suddenly pulled taut. She gasped, pressing her hand to her chest as pain bloomed sharp and bright beneath her sternum. But Theron wasn't finished. "However," he said, and the hall went silent, "there is another matter to address." He gestured, and 2 guards appeared at Alara's sides, gripping her arms. "The moon goddess saw fit to pair me with this Omega. A cruel joke, perhaps, or a test of my devotion to this pack's future." They dragged her forward through the crowd. Wolves pressed back, creating a pathway, their expressions ranging from shock to disgust. Alara's wolf was screaming now, clawing at her from the inside, begging her to fight, to run, to do anything but submit to this humiliation. They forced her onto the dais, onto her knees. "Look at her," Theron commanded the assembled pack. "This is what the bond would have given me. Weakness, mediocrity, shame." He circled her slowly, a predator displaying his prey. "An alpha's mate must be strong, must be worthy, must bring honor and power to those she leads." Mira laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "How pathetic," she purred. "The moon goddess must have been drunk." The crowd laughed with her. Theron stopped in front of Alara, tilting her chin up with one finger so she had no choice but to meet his eyes. "I, Theron Blackridge, Alpha of the Shadow Moon Pack and Lord of the Northern Territory, reject you as my mate. I sever this bond. I cast you out." The words hit like a physical force. The golden thread between them didn't just break, it exploded. Alara screamed as agony tore through her chest, her wolf howling in anguish as the bond shredded itself into 1,000 pieces. She felt it in her bones, in her blood, or in the very core of her being. The moon goddess's blessing being ripped away, leaving nothing but raw, bleeding emptiness behind. She collapsed onto the dais, gasping for air that wouldn't come. "Guards!" Theron's voice came from very far away. "Remove her from Packlands. Immediately. If she's found within our borders at dawn, kill her." Strong hands grabbed her, lifting her, dragging her. The crowd parted like a sea, their faces blurring together into a mass of contempt and satisfaction. Someone spat at her. Someone else laughed. They threw her out the main doors into the freezing autumn night. Alara lay on the frost-covered ground, shaking so hard her teeth chattered. The pain in her chest was unbearable, a gaping wound that kept tearing itself wider. Her wolf was silent now, not peaceful, but broken. Shut down, retreating into some dark corner where the agony couldn't reach. She had to move. Dawn was 6 hours away, 6 hours to get beyond pack borders or die. But when she tried to stand, her legs wouldn't cooperate. The bond severing had taken something vital from her, leaving her hollowed out and weak. Ilara. She looked up to find her mother standing in the doorway, wrapped in a thick shawl. For one wild moment, hope surged in her chest. Her parents had never been warm, but surely now, in her darkest hour. "You should go," her mother said softly. Not unkindly, just empty. "There's nothing for you here. There never was." "Mother, please." "We did what we thought was best." Her mother's eyes were wet, but no tears fell. "You were so powerful when you were born, Ilara, so bright. We were terrified, so we had your power bound. I locked away, to keep you safe, to keep us safe. An Omega with that kind of power." She shook her head. "It was never supposed to matter. You were never supposed to be chosen by an Alpha." The words didn't make sense. Power? Binding? Ilara had never been powerful. She'd always been weak, small, forgettable. "The binding should have held," her mother continued, "but bonds this strong, when they break..." She stepped back into the pack house. I'm so sorry, but you have to go now." Before they come back, the door closed with a soft click. Ilara was alone. She didn't remember dragging herself into the forest. Didn't remember the hours of stumbling through darkness, her body growing colder with each step, the pain in her chest spreading outward until she couldn't tell where the bond wound ended and the rest of her began. The storm hit around midnight. Not snow, not yet, but freezing rain that soaked through her thin dress in seconds, turning her skin blue and her fingers numb. The temperature plummeted. Ilara's breath came in white clouds that dissipated into the darkness. She was going to die out here. The thought came with strange clarity and stranger peace. Maybe this was better. Cleaner. No more humiliation, no more pain. Just the cold and the dark and then... nothing. She found the ruins by accident. Half-collapsed remains of an old barn at the edge of pack territory, one wall still standing, offering minimal shelter from the wind. Ilara crawled inside, her body shaking so violently she could barely control her limbs. This is it, she thought. This is how it ends. She closed her eyes and waited for the darkness to take her. Warmth. No, that was the first thing Ilara noticed as consciousness crept back. Not the blazing heat of a fire, but the gentle, enveloping warmth of fur. She opened her eyes and found herself surrounded by wolves. Her scream caught in her throat, frozen by shock and cold and sheer impossibility. They sat in a perfect circle around her, massive forms barely visible in the pre-dawn darkness. Their eyes glowed in the shadows, amber and silver and gold. 1, 2, 3, 4. She counted them with growing disbelief, her mind struggling to process what she was seeing. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 wolves. Each one easily twice the size of a normal alpha, their shoulders level with her chest even as she lay on the ground. They'd positioned themselves around her like a living barrier against the cold, yet their combined body heat creating a warm pocket of air that had probably saved her life. They'd protected her through the night. The largest wolf, sitting directly in front of her, its fur a mix of silver and black, watched her with intelligent golden eyes. Something ancient stirred in its gaze, something that made her wolf suddenly surge back to consciousness with a desperate, hopeful whine. The wolf stood, and the earth itself seemed to tremble. It was Impossible. No wolf grew that large. Its head was level with hers even though she was sitting up now, and when it moved, muscles rippled beneath fur that seemed to catch and hold the early morning light like liquid metal. Then it shifted. The transformation was unlike anything Alara had ever seen, smooth and fluid and utterly controlled. Bones flowed rather than cracked. Ye fur receded like water flowing uphill. And within seconds, a man stood before her. He was ancient and ageless all at once. Scars traced white lines across his bare chest and arms. Old wounds from battles Alara couldn't imagine. His hair was the same silver black as his wolf, falling past his shoulders, and his eyes. Those golden eyes held centuries of knowledge and patience. The scent of aged oak and winter snow and pine and storm rolled off him in waves so powerful that Alara's wolf immediately rolled onto her back in submission. "We've been waiting for you," he said. His voice was deep and rough like stones grinding together. "For a very long time." Alara's mind reeled. I don't understand." "Your power has been bound since infancy," he continued calmly, as if discussing the weather. "A foolish, fearful choice by those who should have protected you instead." He gestured to the other wolves, who had begun shifting as well, each transformation as controlled and fluid as his had been. They were all male, all scarred, all radiating power that made the air thick and heavy. The rejection broke the binding. "You are finally free." "Free to die in a barn?" The words came out bitter, broken. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Free to become what you were always meant to be." He extended his hand. "My name is Kale. I am the first shield of the Matriarch's Guard, and you, Alara Winters, are the wolf we have been searching for." The title rang through her like a bell. "Matriarch?" "The prophecy spoke of you," one of the other guards said. He was younger than Kale, with copper-colored hair and amber eyes. "Born under a silver moon, I power bound by fear, cast out by pride, and when the bond is severed, when pain breaks the chains." He recited the words like poetry, like scripture. "The matriarch rises." Alara's laugh came out harsh and desperate. "You have the wrong person. I'm nobody. I'm weak. I can't even hold my wolf form for an hour. I'm just—" "You were made weak," Kale interrupted gently. "By magic, by binding, by lies told so many times you believed them yourself." He knelt beside her, bringing those ancient golden eyes level with hers. "But the binding is broken now, and your wolf is waking up." As if summoned by his words, Alara felt something stirred deep in her core. Not the small, frightened presence she'd always known as her wolf, but something vast and powerful and absolutely furious. It unfurled inside her like wings spreading after a lifetime of being caged. "I can't," she gasped, doubling over as energy surged through her body in waves. "What's happening?" "You're remembering," Kyle said. "Who you were always meant to be." The other guards had formed a protective circle around them, their eyes scanning the forest for threats. They moved with military precision, each one covering a specific zone, their bodies tense and ready. "There's a cabin," Kyle said, helping Alara to her feet. "Hidden beyond the border. Safe. We can take you there." "Why?" Alara whispered. "Why would you help me?" He smiled then, a real smile that transformed his scarred face. "Because we were made for this. Born for this. Our entire bloodline exists for one purpose, to guard the matriarch. And you, little one, are finally here." The cabin was more like a fortress. It sat deep in unclaimed territory, surrounded by ancient trees and natural barriers that made it nearly impossible to find without knowing exactly where to look. Built from stone and aged timber, it had clearly been here for centuries, waiting. The guards moved with practiced efficiency, starting fires, preparing food, creating a safe space. Alara watched them, her mind still reeling. These massive, powerful warriors were treating her like she mattered. "Rest," Cal commanded gently, guiding her to a chair by the fire. "Your body has been through trauma. The severing, the cold, the awakening. You need to recover before we begin." "Begin what?" "Your training." He sat across from her, the firelight casting dancing shadows across his features. Ida, the prophecy was specific about timing. You would come to us broken and cast out, and we would have precious little time to prepare you before the old pack came looking. Alara's blood ran cold. They won't come looking for me. Theron made it very clear. They will, another guard interrupted. His name was Ronan, and he had scars that looked like claw marks down the left side of his face. Because the binding didn't just hide your power, it hid your scent, your true scent. But now, he inhaled deeply, and something like awe crossed his expression. Now you smell like moonlight and magic and ancient bloodlines. Every dominant wolf within 100 miles will be able to scent you once your power fully manifests. And they'll come, Kale confirmed, to claim you, to control you, or to kill you before you become a threat. Alara pulled her knees to her chest, suddenly feeling very small despite the power still pulsing beneath her skin. I don't know how to fight. I don't know how to be powerful. I've spent my entire life being nothing. Then it's time, Kale said softly, to learn what you are. The ancient texts were kept in the cabin's basement, thick leather tomes bound with silver chains, their pages yellow with age. Kyle brought them up carefully, handling them like precious relics. The first matriarch rose 3,000 years ago, he began, opening the largest book to a page marked with a silver ribbon. She wasn't chosen by the moon goddess the way normal mates are chosen. She was created, forged, a direct vessel of the goddess's will. Alara leaned closer, studying the illustrations. They showed a massive white wolf, larger than any creature she'd ever seen, with eyes that glowed like stars. She could speak mind to mind with any wolf in her territory, Kale continued. Could command with just a thought, could heal wounds that should have been fatal, could sense emotions and intentions as clearly as you or I might smell smoke. He turned the page. But her greatest power was this. She could challenge the dominance of any alpha, no matter how strong, and her will would prevail. A queen, Alara whispered. More than that. A force of nature. The balance between human civilization and our wilder instincts. Kale's finger traced the ancient text. The matriarch line was supposed to continue, one in every generation, but somewhere along the way, the bloodline was lost. Or so we thought. Another guard, this one named Finn, younger than the others with dark eyes and an easy smile, added, the prophecy said she would return when the packs fell into chaos, when alphas chose power over sacred bonds, when the old ways were forgotten. That's happening now, Ronan said grimly. Across all the territories, forced mating, pack wars, alphas rejecting true bonds for political gain. He looked at Alara. Your rejection was just one in dozens over the past decade. But yours broke the binding, Kale said, because Theron Blackridge is no ordinary alpha. His bloodline traces back to the first kings. His rejection carried weight, power, enough to shatter even the strongest magical locks. Alara's hands trembled as she touched the page. My parents did this to me, bound my power. They said... She swallowed hard. They said they were afraid. They should have been, Kyle said, not unkindly. Not of you, but of what the world would do to you. A matriarch without protection, without training, without her guards? He shook his head. They made a terrible choice, but it came from love, twisted as it was. What happens now? Alara asked. Now, Kyle stood, closing the book with a soft thump. You let your wolf out. The transformation happened 3 days later. They'd spent the time preparing. Kale teaching her meditation techniques to connect with her wolf, the other guards explaining the nature of pack bonds and dominance, and the delicate balance of power that governed their world. But nothing could have prepared her for this. Don't fight it, Kale instructed. They stood in a clearing behind the cabin, or all 10 guards forming a protective circle around her. Your wolf has been caged for 22 years. When she finally breaks free, it's going to be violent. Overwhelming. Let it happen. Alara closed her eyes, reaching inward toward that vast presence she'd been feeling since the rejection. Hello, she thought tentatively. The response was immediate and overwhelming. A tidal wave of rage and joy and power that nearly knocked her off her feet. Her wolf surged forward, No longer the small, frightened thing she'd known, but something ancient and magnificent and absolutely done with being restrained. Yes, her wolf growled. Finally, finally, the shift began. But it wasn't like the painful, awkward transformations Alara had struggled through before. This was fluid, natural. Right. Her bones didn't snap. They flowed, a lengthening and reshaping with a sensation that felt like being stretched in warm water. Fur erupted across her skin in waves of silver and white, each hair shimmering with an inner light that had nothing to do with the afternoon sun. She felt herself growing, larger, stronger, her muscles expanding, her senses sharpening until she could hear the heartbeat of every creature in the forest, smell the fear and awe radiating from the guards, feel the vibration of the earth beneath her paws. Power washed over her in waves, each one building on the last until she thought she might explode from the sheer force of it. Energy crackled across her fur like lightning, making the air around her shimmer and dance. And then it was complete. Alara opened her eyes that now glowed with an ethereal silver light, and looked down at herself. Arshi was massive, easily as large as Kale in his wolf form, possibly larger. Her fur was pure white with silver undertones, and it seemed to hold and reflect light in impossible ways, making her appear almost luminous. When she moved, she felt strength flowing through her like water through a river. Endless, powerful, utterly natural. Is this real? She thought. This is us, her wolf replied. This is who we were always meant to be. Alara raised her head and howled. The sound started deep in her chest and built until it filled the entire forest, a howl of pain and triumph, and unleashed power that made the earth tremble. Birds exploded from the trees. Small creatures fled in terror. And somewhere in the distance, wolves from the Shadow Moon Pack froze mid-step, just their instincts screaming at them that something fundamental had just shifted in the natural order. When the howl finally faded, Alara looked at the guards. All 10 of them had dropped to one knee, their heads bowed in perfect synchronization. She is the matriarch, Kyle said, his voice thick with emotion. The prophecy is fulfilled. Alara shifted back to human form, another smooth, controlled transformation that left her breathless with wonder. One of the guards quickly draped a cloak around her shoulders. I felt it, she whispered. All of you. Your emotions, your thoughts, your loyalty. She pressed a hand to her chest. It's like you're all connected to me. We are, Kale confirmed. The Matriarch's Guard is bound by blood oath and ancient magic. We exist to serve, protect, and guide you on what you feel is the bond between us. Not like a mate bond, but something older, deeper, more permanent. The other guards rose, but their expressions remained reverent. What you did just now, Finn said, his dark eyes wide. That howl. I felt it in my bones, like a command from the moon goddess herself. Because it was, Kale explained. The matriarch's voice carries divine authority. When you speak, truly speak, wolves must listen. Alara's legs suddenly felt weak. This is insane. Yesterday I was scrubbing floors. Today I'm supposedly some kind of supernatural queen? Not supposedly, Ronan corrected gently. You are. The power doesn't lie. He gestured to her. Look at your hands. She did, and gasped. Faint silver marks had appeared on her palms, swirling patterns that looked like a mix between constellations and ancient runes. They glowed softly in the fading daylight. The marks of the matriarch, Kyle said. They'll grow stronger as you do. Eventually, they'll cover your arms, your back, your chest, visible in both forms. A mark of your authority and power. This is too much, Alara breathed. I can't. You can, Kale interrupted firmly. And you will, because you don't have a choice. The old pack knows something changed. They'll be coming, and when they do, you need to be ready. He was right. Alara could feel it, a pull in her chest that had nothing to do with the severed mate bond. An awareness of the Shadow Moon Pack's territory, of the wolves moving through it, of their fear and confusion and growing hostility. They were coming. Days turned to weeks. Some of the guards trained her relentlessly, not just in combat, though there was plenty of that, but in the subtler aspects of her power. How to sense emotions and intentions, how to project authority without speaking, how to heal minor wounds with just a touch and her will. Each guard brought different skills. Kale taught her strategy and pack politics, drawing on his centuries of experience. Ronan drilled her in combat techniques, his scarred hands surprisingly gentle as he corrected her form. Finn showed her how to move through the forest like a shadow, how to hunt, how to survive. The others, Darius with his gift for reading intentions, Marcus who could track anything, Ash who understood healing, Luca who knew every plant and poison in the forest, Kieran who was a master of pack law, Thor who could fight like a berserker, and Gray who seemed to know things before they happened. Each contributed their expertise. But more than that, they became her family. They shared meals around the fire, swapping stories and jokes. They looked after each other, checked on each other, cared for each other. When Alara woke from nightmares of the rejection ceremony, Kyle was there with tea and quiet understanding. When she struggled with controlling her new strength, Ronan met her with patient encouragement rather than criticism. "I never had this," she told Kale one night, watching the others argue good-naturedly about who would cook dinner. The pack was cold, distant, but this, she gestured to the scene before them. This is what family should feel like. "You are ours," Kale said simply, "as we are yours." That bond goes both ways. Our little matriarch. "Don't call me that," Alara protested. "Not yet. I'm still just me." He smiled. "You were never just anything. You're only now discovering what everyone else has been too blind to see." But despite the warmth and growth, Alara couldn't shake the feeling of impending confrontation. The bond that had been severed still ached sometimes, a phantom pain that reminded her of what had been taken. And worse, sometimes she caught herself wondering if Theron felt it too, if he regretted his choice. "He will," Kale said when she finally voiced the thought. "They always do. But by then, it won't matter, because you'll have outgrown him in every way that counts." The scouting report came on a cold morning in early winter. "Shadow Moon wolves," Gray reported, his expression grim. "3 of them. Oh, they found our trail," Kale swore. "How long until they report back?" "Already gone. They'll reach the pack by nightfall." The guards immediately shifted into battle mode, checking weapons, reviewing defensive positions, preparing for what they all knew was coming. "We need to move," Ronan said. "No." The word came from Alara, stronger and more certain than she felt. "No more running." Kyle studied her carefully. "You're not ready for a full confrontation. Your power is still developing. If they send their full force, then we'll deal with it." Alara squared her shoulders. "I'm tired of hiding, tired of being afraid. If they want to find me, let them find me." The guards exchanged glances. "She's right," Finn finally said. "We can't keep running forever, and the longer we wait, the more wolves they'll bring." "This is your decision," Kyle told Alara. "We serve you. We'll fight with you or flee with you. But understand, if we make our stand here, it will be a battle. Possibly to the death." Alara thought of the girl she'd been just weeks ago, small, frightened, invisible. That girl would have run, would have hidden, would have done anything to avoid conflict, but she was no longer that girl. "We stand," she said. "We fight, and we win." Kyle's smile was fierce and proud. "As you command, matriarch." They came at dawn 3 days later. Alara felt them approaching long before she saw them, a wave of aggressive intention rolling through the forest like smoke. Her new senses painted a clear picture. 27 wolves, all in fighting form, moving in coordinated assault formation. And at their head, Theron Blackridge. The scent of forest and embers and ozone and steel hit her like a physical blow, bringing with it memories of humiliation and pain. But this time, something was different. This time, her wolf didn't whimper and cower. This time, her wolf rose up with lethal grace and growled, "Mine to deal with." The Shadow Moon wolves burst into the clearing in a wave of fur and fangs, and barely contained violence. They surrounded the cabin in seconds, their formation professional and intimidating. Theron shifted first, a powerful, controlled transformation that left him standing at the front of his army in human form, radiating dominance. Mira appeared at his side moments later, her crimson dress from the rejection ceremony replaced with leather fighting gear. Alara Winters, Theron's voice boomed across the clearing. Yes, you were exiled from Shadow Moonlands. You were ordered to leave the territory. Yet here you stand, protected by rogue wolves, living in defiance of my command. Your command, Alara replied calmly, stepping out of the cabin, means nothing to me anymore. You severed our bond. You cast me out. You have no authority over me now. The guards flanked her, all 10 of them in human form, radiating controlled menace. Even massively outnumbered, they didn't show a hint of fear. Theron's eyes narrowed as he studied them. Who are you? He demanded of Kyle. No one you have any business knowing, Kyle replied evenly. Mira laughed. That same sharp, cruel sound from the ceremony. Look at you, she sneered at Alara. Playing dress-up with outcasts and rogues, how pathetic. Did you think collecting strays would make you matter? Did you think... She didn't finish the sentence, because Alara shifted. The transformation took less than 2 seconds, a fluid, gorgeous shift that left her standing in her massive white wolf form, fur gleaming with inner light, silver eyes locked onto Mira with predatory focus. The Shadow Moon wolves recoiled. Several whimpered. 1 or 2 actually backed up. Mira stared, her confident smirk faltering. Attack her, Mira suddenly snarled at the wolves around her. She's just an Omega. She shifted mid-sentence, launching herself at Alara in a blur of auburn fur and fury. The fight lasted exactly 4 seconds. Mira was fast. Alara would give her that. Trained, aggressive, confident in her superior strength. She came at Alara with claws extended and jaws open, aiming for the throat in a classic killing move. Alara simply caught her. One massive paw shot out with speed that shouldn't have been possible, catching Mira mid-lunge by the throat. Alara squeezed, not enough to kill, but enough to make it very, very clear that she could, and slammed Mira into the ground so hard the earth cracked beneath them. Mira thrashed, trying to escape, but Alara's weight and strength were overwhelming. The white wolf leaned down, bringing her muzzle close to Mira's ear, and growled, a sound so deep and primal that every wolf in the clearing felt it in their bones. The message was clear. I could end you right now. Remember that. Then Alara released her. Mira scrambled backward, her eyes wide with terror, her tail tucked between her legs in pure submission. She shifted back to human form, gasping, one hand pressed to her bruised throat. Impossible, she whispered. Ara, you're an Omega. You're weak. She is the matriarch, Kyle said quietly. And as if his words were a signal, all 10 guards shifted. What happened next would be talked about in hushed whispers for generations. The guards didn't become normal wolves. They became something else entirely. Creatures from legend and nightmare, wolves so large and powerful that even Theron, with all his alpha dominance, looked small by comparison. Kyle's wolf was black as midnight, with silver streaks like lightning scars, standing tall enough that his shoulder reached a man's chest. Ronan became a gray beast covered in scars that glowed like old embers. Finn shifted into a copper-colored wolf, whose very presence made the air shimmer with heat. Each transformation was absolute, ancient, utterly beyond anything the Shadow Moon wolves had ever encountered. They were mythic guardians. Dire wolves from the before times, creatures that shouldn't exist in the modern world. And they stood in perfect formation around Alara, a living wall of unstoppable force. The Shadow Moon army broke. More than half of them immediately submitted, dropping to their bellies, exposing their throats, whimpering their surrender. The scent of fear filled the clearing, thick and sharp. Only Theron remained standing, his ice-blue eyes locked on Alara with an expression she couldn't quite read. Shock. Regret. Something else that made her wolf stir with uncomfortable recognition. You, he breathed. This whole time you were... Alara shifted back to human form. One of the guards tossed her a cloak, and she wrapped it around herself with deliberate calm, never breaking eye contact with her former alpha. "I was exactly what you saw," she said quietly. "Weak, powerless, invisible, because my power was bound, hidden, locked away by parents who feared what the world would do to a matriarch without her guards." She took a step forward, and Theron actually flinched. "You rejected me because I wasn't strong enough, wasn't worthy enough. But the truth is, you rejected me because you were too blind to see what was right in front of you." "Alara," Theron started. "No." The word cracked like a whip, silencing him immediately. "You don't get to speak, not yet. You had your chance to speak, and you used it to humiliate me in front of our entire pack, to sever a bond the moon goddess herself created, to cast me out to die." She gestured to the Shadow Moon wolves cowering around them. "You brought an army to hunt me, to drag me back or kill me. For what? Pride? Control? Because you couldn't stand the idea that an Omega might have escaped your cruelty?" "I thought," Theron's voice cracked, "I thought you were dead. The scouts reported your scent disappearing in the storm. I thought I'd killed you. And yet you're here with an army instead of alone." Alara let that observation hang in the air. "Tell me, Alpha, when you realized I might have survived, was your first thought relief? Or was it fear? Fear that I might become something you couldn't control?" The silence that followed was deafening. Theron dropped to one knee. The gesture shocked everyone, his wolves, Mira, even Alara herself. And Alpha didn't kneel, not to anyone. It went against every instinct, every law of pack dominance. "I made a mistake," Theron said hoarsely. "The biggest mistake of my life. I rejected the moon goddess's gift because I was too arrogant to see value beyond bloodlines and politics. I hurt you, humiliated you, cast you out." He raised his eyes to hers, and they were swimming with genuine anguish. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I am begging for mercy, for my pack. They followed my orders. This is my fault, not theirs." Alara looked at the assembled wolves. Most of them had tormented her in one way or another over the years. Small cruelties and large dismissals and insults and casual violence. Part of her wanted to unleash her guards, to show them what real power looked like. But what would that prove? That she could be as cruel as them? Or that strength was only measured in how thoroughly you could crush your enemies? "Justice," she said finally, "is not the same as vengeance." She walked forward until she stood directly in front of Theron. At this distance, she could smell the storm scent of him, feel the residual pull of the bond that had once connected them. Now just a ghost, a memory, a might have been. "You will return to Shadow Moon territory," she commanded. "You will gather the pack, and you will tell them the truth, all of it, that you rejected your true mate for politics, that your choice was wrong, that the moon goddess paired you with the matriarch and you were too blind to see." Theron's jaw clenched, but he nodded. "Furthermore," Alara continued, her voice carrying across the clearing with supernatural clarity, "new laws will be enacted. No alpha may force a mate bond. No wolf may be rejected without cause or council approval. And no Omega will ever again be treated as less than, simply because their power is different." She turned to address the entire Shadow Moon Assembly. "I am Alara Winters, the matriarch of the Northern Territories. This land, all of it, falls under my protection now. Any pack that wishes to remain here will respect these laws. Any alpha who defies them will answer to me." The power in her words made several wolves whimper. "As for you," she looked back at Theron, "you may keep your title, your pack, your lands, but you will never again have dominion over me or mine. These borders," she gestured to the clearing around them, "mark the edge of my personal territory. Cross them uninvited. And there will be consequences." "And Mira?" someone in the crowd asked. Alara's eyes found the auburn-haired woman, still on the ground, still trembling. "Mira Thornwood attacked the matriarch. By ancient law, that carries a death sentence." Mira went absolutely white. "However," Alara continued, "I am not interested in ruling through fear and executions. Mira, You are banished from Shadow Moon lands for 1 year. During that time, you will learn what it means to be powerless, to be alone, to depend on the mercy of others. She let the words sink in. If you survive, if you learn, you may petition for readmission, but you will never again hold a position of authority. The cruelty of it was perfect. Not death, but the loss of everything Mira valued. Status, power, control. Alara watched the woman crumble under the weight of it, and felt nothing. No satisfaction, no triumph, just the cold certainty that justice had been served. Go, Alara commanded the Shadow Moon Wolves, all of you, and remember this day, remember what you saw here. The matriarch has returned. The old ways are awakening, and the age of alphas ruling through brutality alone is ending. They fled, not ran. Fled. A disorganized, terrified retreat that left claw marks in the earth and the scent of submission hanging in the air like fog. Theron was the last to leave. He stood at the edge of the clearing, looking back at Alara with an expression that held grief and awe and the devastating weight of understanding exactly what he'd lost. For what it's worth, he said quietly, I'm sorry. And I hope you find happiness. Real happiness. The kind I was too stupid to give you. Then he too was gone. Alara stood in the sudden silence, her guards slowly shifting back to human form around her. Her entire body was shaking, not with fear, but with the aftershocks of power used and dominance asserted, and a confrontation she'd never imagined she could win. You did well, Kale said softly, appearing at her shoulder. Better than well. You showed strength and mercy in equal measure. That is what makes a true leader. I thought I'd feel different, Alara admitted. Seeing him kneel, watching them all submit. I thought I'd feel vindicated, triumphant. But instead, I just feel free, Kyle suggested. Yes. She turned to look at him and found the ancient guardian smiling at her with something like pride. For the first time in my life, I feel truly free. Then our work is complete, Kale said. Not the work of training or preparation. That will continue for years. But the work of breaking the chains that bound you. Of helping you see yourself as you truly are. He bowed his head slightly. My matriarch. Alara looked around at the 10 guards, her family, her found pack. What happens now? Now, Finn said with his easy grin, we rebuild. We establish your territory properly. We reach out to other packs and begin the work of reforming the old laws. Now, Ronan added, you become the leader you were born to be. Now, Kyle finished, you stop running from your destiny and start embracing it. The epilogue happened 3 months later. Winter had settled over the northern territories with soft snow and crisp air. The cabin had been expanded into a proper compound. Houses for the guards, a great hall for councils and ceremonies, defensive walls hidden in the forest's natural barriers. Word had spread quickly. The matriarch had returned. Packs came to pay their respects, to swear fealty, to petition for her judgment in disputes they couldn't resolve alone. Alara met each one with a careful balance of authority and compassion, learning as she went, growing stronger with each passing day. The marks on her skin had spread as Kale predicted. Silver and white patterns that covered her arms, traced up her neck, and spiraled across her back. In wolf form, they glowed like captured moonlight. In human form, they marked her as something other, something more. The guards had become her council, her family, her most trusted advisors. But more than that, they'd become her friends. The pack house was filled with laughter and arguments and the warm chaos of people who genuinely cared for each other. And Kale. She found him that evening standing at the edge of the compound, looking out over the snow-covered forest. The scent of aged oak and winter snow and pine and storm wrapped around her like a familiar embrace. Second thoughts? She asked, coming to stand beside him. Never, he replied. Just remembering. My ancestors waited 1,000 years for this moment, for you. Sometimes it still feels like a dream. A dream where I went from servant to supernatural queen in a matter of weeks? Alara shook her head. I think that classifies as a fever dream. Kale laughed, a rare, genuine sound. Perhaps, but it's the truth nonetheless. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. The bond, Alara finally said. The one that was severed. Does it ever truly heal? The wound heals, Kyle said carefully. But the scar remains. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Scars remind us of where we've been, what we've survived, and new bonds. She kept her eyes on the horizon. Are they possible? The moon goddess creates fated bonds, Kale said slowly. But we create chosen ones. Sometimes the latter are stronger, deeper, because they're built on trust and understanding rather than simple biology. Ilara turned to look at him. This ancient warrior who'd become her anchor, her teacher, her constant. If I asked you to consider, I've been considering, Kale interrupted gently. Since the moment you first shifted and I felt your power wash over me. Since you stood your ground against an army and chose mercy over revenge. Since you made these wild warriors into a family. He reached out, tucking a strand of silver-streaked hair behind her ear. The touch sent warmth flooding through her, her wolf stirring with interest and approval. I am yours already, Kale said. As your guard, as your advisor, as your friend. If you wish me to be more, he smiled. I would count it the greatest honor of my very long life. The bond that formed between them wasn't the explosive, overwhelming force of the mate bond that had been severed. It was gentler, chosen. A golden thread woven with care rather than destiny's command. But it was no less powerful for being chosen. See, Alara rose up on her toes and kissed him, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were smiling. So, Kale said, his thumb tracing gentle patterns on her cheek, what does the matriarch wish to do now? Now, Alara said, I want to build something better. A pack where power doesn't equal cruelty. Where omegas aren't servants and alphas aren't tyrants. Where the moon goddess's will is respected but not weaponized. A tall order. Good thing I have 10 legendary warriors to help me. Kale's laugh echoed across the snowy clearing. Indeed you do. But even as they stood there, wrapped in new love and new hope, Alara felt something shifting on the horizon. A darkness gathering, ancient and patient and waiting for the right moment to strike. The prophecy had spoken of her rise, but it had also warned of trials to come. Of an ancient evil that would test even the matriarch's power. Of battles yet unfought and prices yet unpaid. The blood moon was coming, and with it, everything would change. But that was a problem for tomorrow. Tonight, Alara Winters, once the pack's invisible servant, now the matriarch of the Northern Territories, stood surrounded by family, claimed by choice rather than fate, and finally, gloriously, irrevocably free. And so, Alara's journey transformed her from a broken, rejected Omega into the matriarch, a supernatural queen whose power exceeded even the most dominant alphas. She learned that true strength comes not from dominance or cruelty, but from choosing mercy over vengeance and building chosen family over forced bonds. Her story teaches us that sometimes being cast out is actually being set free. That what others see as weakness might hide extraordinary power, and that the most devastating rejections can shatter the very chains that were holding us back. What do you think? Would you have chosen mercy like Alara did? Or would vengeance have been sweeter? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of transformation and supernatural justice, smash that like button and share it with someone who loves werewolf romance. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss the next chapter in Alara's journey. Because the blood moon is rising, ancient evils are awakening, and the matriarch's greatest trials are yet to come. Thank you for listening to this tale of rejection, power, and rebirth. We'll see you in the next chapter, where darkness gathers and Alara must prove she truly is the queen the prophecy foretold. Until then, may your bonds be true and your wolves be strong.